So guys, we just hit the hour, so let's go ahead and get started. So welcome to Elevate Your Profit and Productivity with a High Performance Culture. My name is Jeffrey T. Suey. I have worked as an executive and corporate coach for the last 23 years now. Myself and my team have worked with the largest organizations on the planet. If you hadn't seen the video, we work with Shell and Dole and large governments. The U.S. government is one of the places where some of our actual coaching technology is being leveraged in the Health and Human Services department. So I'm really, really lucky to be here with you today to cover some of these distinctions. And I say that because, now we're in a place where over Zoom here, we can meet with somebody who is halfway around the world. In this case, I think almost everyone is in Pakistan. And I'm here in the East Coast of the USA. So it's fantastic to be with you in this way. And I can't wait to learn about what some of your goals and outcomes and challenges are within your organization or in the organizations that you're looking to coach and to serve. The organization that I have founded and that myself and my faculty run is, I think you could see it here with our emblem, called Master Coach University. We actually train coaches all around the world and certify them with the core competencies that are taught globally that have ultimately been codified by International Coach Federation. But also on top of that, and in addition to that, I'm also a coach. I coach every single week. I coached earlier today before I took a nap and stayed up late to be here with you. And I work with all different sized organizations and individuals personally just to make their lives better as well. And I've been doing that, again, for the last couple decades. So I first of all want to say a thank you to Salman, who has invited you here and has brought us together. Really, the only reason why we're seeing each other and have a chance to connect here is because of Salman. So Salman, thank you very much for putting this together. It's a real opportunity for all of us, I know. Really, really great. And what I want to know before we start, though, and maybe this is something where a few of you at least can join us over audio, but again, like I said, if you can't, please type in the chat. I want to know what brought you here. Why are you, I want to know, who are you, first of all? I want to get to know you a little bit. And then what brought you here today? Why did you come? What's the most important outcome or goal or challenge that really is the reason why you wanted to dedicate some of your time today to be here in this conversation around elevating profit and productivity with a high-performance culture? Who can share?
Okay, can you hear me?
I can.
Great. My name is Shayan, and I'm an HR professional. I'm going to be very honest. I know very little about coaching because that's not the in thing in Pakistan. My major reason for joining this session is to learn. Obviously, there is no harm in learning, and I think that would be a great leverage for me in my professional career. So that's why I'm here.
Fantastic, Cheyenne. Well, welcome. And when you say learning, it sounds like that's an area that you've already leveraged for some success and some things that you've really been able to make a difference with already. So continuing on that path sounds like it makes total sense. So really acknowledge you for being here. Fantastic. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Who else? Why are you here? What brought you here today? Who are you, and why did you decide to come? I think Zahid raised his hand. I'll see if I can unmute you.
Yeah, hello. My name is Zahid Ali Shah. I'm working as GM operations in my organization. As a responsible person, I have to introduce a performance culture, a high performance culture in my organization, and I have to enable people so that we can together work in a very better environment or a good environment culture, which is highly productive for everybody. So everybody can learn and can benefit from each other. So this is my role. So that's why it's very interesting for me to know about it more.
Wow. Yeah, I think we wrote the name of this conversation exactly for you and what you're after. So that's fantastic. And I really want to acknowledge you for that commitment to your organization at that level, because the environment that we live in, which is part of that, is the company that we work for, the team that we're a part of. Us as a group of people create an environment. And so that environment, whether it's people or places or things or all of the above, shapes people's behavior. It shapes our emotions. It shapes the results, you know. Very few of us rise above our environments, right? So if you have the opportunity to actually build an environment, that environment builds the people in a way. So can't acknowledge you enough for the wisdom that it takes to put the time and the energy in that so few do, which is probably one of the reasons why we're talking today and why you're already successful at the level that you are. So really fantastic. Again, welcome. I think we had somebody mention in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and read that. We have Harris Hafiz, HR manager from HDF. We are planning for 2024 right now. Makes sense. So we are interested in learning how to make our work culture more productive at HDF. Fantastic. All right, beautiful. So it sounds like we've got some common themes for why you're here. Oh, we had one more. I'm going to check that one out, and then we'll dive in, I promise. I'm Danielle Ahmed Qureshi, working as a team lead in a private company. What brought me here is how to be more productive at work. Interesting. I'm glad that you spoke up about that. Is it Danielle? And I say that because there is a difference between individual productivity and team productivity. And we've already had a few share that they're here to build an environment or build a high-performance culture for a number of people. Just being individually productive on your own, actually producing a result or increasing your performance level, just you on your own, that could be the biggest challenge for any of us. In fact, if you can't do that or you don't do that, it's very unlikely that you're going to be productive enough to build an environment or a high-performance culture for other people, for that matter. You know, those that work for you, if you are a leader and an executive, or those that listen to you closely as a consultant, leader, or coach, or trainer, you know, if you're not setting the pace, if you aren't moving at a speed that is effective such that they can look up to you and the kind of results that you're producing, the likelihood that you can actually make a difference for them is probably pretty low as well. So these two different areas, they seem like they're very different: individual productivity and team productivity, individual performance and team performance. They're so closely linked. One of the biggest challenges I see with big and small organizations is that the leader or one of the managers in an organization, somebody who is responsible for causing other people to produce great results, that they aren't very productive themselves. They aren't very compelling themselves. They're not performing at a very high level themselves. And it's not impossible to cause others to perform better than you, but it's much harder and it's much less likely. So I'm glad you're here. And I really do believe, and I think many of you are probably living proof of this, that when you improve yourself, when you improve your own production, that will make a difference for others. Even if you don't try to help them, even if you don't try to communicate that to them, or if you're not their leader, they'll notice what you're up to. People learn from that. So you're a leader even if you're not meant or specifically attempting to manage other people, you're a leader in who you are. You're a leader in how you perform yourself as well. So that's fantastic. Okay, we had one other, I think we had one or two others. Ahmad Aziz, working as executive procurement in Rifaf International University. What brought me here is to understand the philosophy of coaching. That's exactly what we're going to talk about. I'm glad you brought that up. Perfect. You're in the right place. And experience the multicultural and intellectual diverse environment at the workplace. Beautiful. I love that. And then finally, we'll do one more and then we'll get into it, I promise. Sadaf Youssef from HDF, my concern is to learn the key characteristics that enable high-performance culture, also what skills are required to learn to tackle issues that occur during work time. Yep, this is perfect. You're here for the right reason, I think. Very nice. All right, let's go ahead and dive in. So I promised 4 items here if you saw the email that Salman shared. And these all build on each other, okay? So I'm going to start with the foundation, which is team performance and productivity. And the way I said it in the email, or the way Salman said it in the email, is learning how to double your team's performance and productivity KPIs, key performance indicators, so that you achieve your growth goals. So in order to achieve goals, in order to improve your productivity, your performance, all growth, all performance, it's going to be based on your goal. It all starts with a goal. So I remember talking to an executive for the first time. This was probably 7, 8 years ago. And I asked her, what are your top goals? And she said, well, my responsibility is that I'm the VP of operations, and I run these operations, and I need to maintain all these different things. And I said, yeah, but what do you want? Like, where are you going? Like, what destination do you want to arrive at? And she couldn't answer the question. All she could tell me was all the responsibility she had, the work that she had to do, and she gave me this big list of things that, like, this is my work. And I realized that at that point that she hadn't even imagined what she was after as an endpoint. And this is not an uncommon thing. So many of us don't take the time to even decide, where do we want to end up? What is our ultimate goal? So I'm going to ask you, and now we're beyond just why you're here and what you'd like to learn. This is very specific to either you personally or your organization and the goal you have for your organization. Maybe that's been given to you, or maybe you're the one that creates and decides the goal. But what is your goal? Because if we don't know what the goal is, we have no idea what is performance defined by other than where you want to arrive. So what's your goal? What's your vision for where you want to get to? And I'm not worried about time frame, like if it's 6 months from now or a year from now or 10 years from now. But what's your most important priority goal that you want to see happen for you or for your organization? Who can share?
Okay. For me, I think my personal growth is the most major and primary objective. And that is if I align myself with the goals of the organization. Currently, my organization requires a lot of digitalization, something that I can work with. And obviously, that means my personal growth as well. So I'm aligning myself with the objectives of the organization. And eventually, I will achieve my objective as well, which is getting to a position, getting better growth, increments, promotions. So yeah, that's my goal. Okay. And the organization.
All right, so your goal is to get the promotions and the growth in your career, it sounds like. Is that fair to say? Is that accurate?
Yeah, that is.
Very nice. And you said, now before you said that though, you also said you're aligned with the goals of the organization. So what is I'm sure there's more than one, but what do you think is the #1 priority goal for your organization that you are most aligned with, or that you're aware that is critical for you to actually further and serve?
Technically, there are a lot of different things. Just give me a second. There are actually quite a few things that I can do, but then again, it's the opportunity that I can get. Digitalization is something that is my forte, and there are very few people who can actually get it done. There are a lot of different sources. There are a lot of different open source softwares that can be used to utilize, create new systems, which are obviously, just hold on, just give me a second. Just give me a second.
Okay, so far, what have we heard from Cheyenne? He shared the method through which he might achieve a goal. He shared his own career goal, right, which is a certain promotion. What we haven't heard is the end goal for the organization. All we've heard so far is here's some different technologies that could be leveraged, right? And this is, by the way, this is not uncommon. What was that? Go ahead. Okay, I thought he was back. I think we lost him.
I'm actually back.
Oh, you're back. Okay, great. Please continue.
Okay. So technically, they're like a little, since I've just recently joined this company and there's a lot to explore, and with my pace, which is actually pretty fast. So I need to define myself where I need to grow. There are a lot of different things. They want automation. There are a lot of e-learning projects that they want to work with, but mostly there are a lot of different things that I can do with it, whether it's saving cost, improving performance, training new people. But the most area which is actually untouched, it's the systems, the processes, the process optimization. I can do all of these, but this is the opportunity that the one that is giving me the benefit, which I can indulge myself pretty fast, is this.
Okay.
Digitalization.
Got it. So how will you know when you have achieved that?
Well, the processes that already are currently being done manually through different softwares or just using, daily through phone calls and email, shortlisting, recruitment. What I think is like when we have a system, it will save a lot of time. I think I can cut down one person's cost. That system would cost near to nothing, and that will save at least one person's salary. That is a cost cutting itself with productivity. Either way you can call it, whatever you it.
Okay.
So yeah, I think this is something that I would be measuring as an achievement.
Beautiful. So I'm going to reflect this back just so I make sure I understand this. So the goal of effectively systemizing and digitalizing this particular approach, the measurement so that you know it actually succeeds is that you're going to cut costs to a certain extent. It sounds like equivalent to one employee. Is that correct? Anything I got wrong there?
Either way, we won't be letting go of that employee, but we can utilize that employee in doing something better.
Sure.
Rather than just working with the operations, that person can spend time in doing something additional. Maybe employee experience, maybe employee trainings. So yeah.
Got it. Let me ask you this, because like you said, you're new here, and how long have you been there?
Over a month.
Okay, all right, so pretty new. So being that you're fairly new, you have a chance to look at it as an outsider. You haven't been inside for very long, right? It's a really privileged perspective to have. And it sounds like you already are not just bringing a lot of expertise to the table, but also you have some level of clarity, at least on the goal that we're talking about now, which is phenomenal, especially within a month of being there. So I really acknowledge you for that. And my question for you is, for this organization, what do you think has prevented this organization from achieving that goal up until now?
Fresh perspective. I think the people have been working with a similar capacity. The retention rate is high. Oh, sorry, it's very low. I mean, people have been working this company has been working for last 23 years, and there are people who are with us since the start. If I, see the attrition right now, it is like recently it has been a little higher, like people are leaving. But if you look at the tenure, you look at the dashboard, people have been working for a very long time. And I guess that is a good thing, but a bad thing as well, because obviously new perspective, new ideas coming from different organizations, that is what was missing.
Yep. And what's great is you're part of the new perspective, it sounds like. So congratulations. That's phenomenal. Really, really great. So the purpose for having those individual interactions is that, and I'm checking with you to see what your interest is, because the fact is each goal that you hear, the goal itself is not that important. What's important is that every one of you, whatever your goal is, there are common things that are preventing you from achieving it. I can guarantee you that. And in fact, what was it? Cheyenne started to share it on perspective, and whether it's a new perspective or the wrong perspective or a perspective that limits resources. What stops you from achieving your goal is not that you can't achieve it. It's not that you don't have access to resources or technology to achieve it. It's not that you're not willing to achieve it, probably. There's a lot of hard work going on in every organization that's represented here in this group. The reason why I took the time to dive deep is so that you could actually hear examples of the same problem that's happening over and over again with your performance, your team, and your growth goals as well. And that is that whatever your perspective is, narrows your focus to keep you from resources that you could access. It's just that simple. And so whatever you're after, what you think is preventing you from getting your goal is probably not what's preventing you from getting it. What's actually preventing you from getting it is the mindset, i.e. the way of thinking, as Cheyenne said, the perspective that gives you access to resources or not. And the resources that are available to you are actually probably just about unlimited. People, technologies, time, energy, emotion, commitment. There's a lot of that, again, like I said, represented right here. But what's missing is the mindset to access that. Now, by the way, if you're on your way, as Tayyib, I think, shared, if you're on your way to achieving that goal and nothing, as he said, is preventing you from achieving it, yes, there might be some time involved, right? You may not achieve the goal that you just set today instantaneously. That's not likely to happen, right? We're living in the real world. But if you're consistently pursuing a goal as a team or as an individual, and you're consistently not achieving it, it's because there's a resource you have not tapped into, a person, a technology, an approach, a perspective. And why you wouldn't tap into that goal is very, very simple. And this is exactly what I face every day with my coaching clients. And that is that the way you're thinking about it keeps you from looking at that resource. It keeps you from seeing it. The way in coaching we would call it is a blind spot. It's as if you're blind to something. And now, by the way, that's not an easy thing to think about because most of us want to feel good about how powerful we already are and that we've already seen all the possibilities. And who wants to actually tell the truth that there's something that they may not have seen, right? But the bottom line is that there always is a blind spot. The only question is what blind spots might be limiting you, or in the case of running an organization, limiting your organization. That is what you all have in common. And if you lost interest when I was talking to Cheyenne there, then what you're blind to is how common your challenges are. What you're blind to is what you can learn from a simple conversation where we're asking very, very simple questions for your own organization and make that operational within the structure that you have, or even changing the structure so that it actually can be improved. That is absolutely the limit on any organization's productivity, their KPIs, or their growth. I think Giuliani, you raised your hand. Feel free to unmute yourself, or Salman, if you can help. I'm not. There we go. Go ahead, Giuliani.
Hey. Hi, this is Giuliani. I work for HCL. We have almost like 40 people sitting in this room listening to you this a webinar. I have a quick question. We all have goals. Our organization has its goals. The key to success is how we align our goals with the organization goals. That's understood. But the question is, organizations always make ongoing goals, like, very long-term goals. So how do we understand this part where we are being successful in our current goal? How do we judge that criteria? Number one. Number two is, how much time should it take for us to achieve one goal?
Right. Well, the second question, how much time should it take? The reality is, obviously, there's certain limitations that you may face in terms of human resources, how big your team is, how much time it takes you to actually produce the activities involved to actually get to that goal. But usually the primary limitation, as I mentioned, is whatever resources you have available, they're usually not being maximized. They're usually not being maximized. And there's all sorts of reasons behind that I'm going to cover. That's literally the rest of what we're going to talk about today. Can you remind me what was the question right before that, right before you asked how much time should it take?
Yes.
What was that other question?
The first one was, we do understand that a successful employee is the one who aligns his goals with the organization's goals, but the organization goals are always long-term. Like if you look at the mission statement of any organization, it's always a long-term goal.
Sure.
So how do we measure our success in that course?
So first of all, your goal and the organization goal may be different. And that can be okay depending on what incentives are provided. The organization who employs you may be willing to give you things that are specific to your goal, right? That actually serves what you want in exchange for you helping the organization reach what the organization wants, ultimately. That could be a fair exchange, possibly. Now, that may not be the end-all be-all, because ultimately there may be times where you can't get everything you want, and you have to be willing to serve your organization, the greater good in the organization, right? And in that case,
यूनिवर्सिटी में एडमिशन बढ़ती है, कितना पैसा पाऊंगा कितना?
Yeah, we have some background noise. If you have crosstalk happening, just go ahead and mute yourself.
अच्छा, ठीक है.
Okay, so again, continuing on this point, if you have to set your goals aside for the moment to serve your organization, the question is why? Why will you do that? Now, if your goals, how would I put this? If you care about what your organization is looking to accomplish, if it's something that's very important to you, it aligns with what we call your values, your priorities, then you may be willing to set your own goals aside to serve your organization for a certain period of time. Now, eventually you need to meet your own needs as well, your own selfish needs, right? But for some period of time, you may be willing to align solely with your organization's goals, and that's especially assuming that you believe those are important and that you emotionally are involved with your organization's goals, but not everybody is involved at that level. Sometimes you will find members of your team, maybe even you, the reason why you show up for work is because you're paid well, and that's all. There's nothing that your organization does that you really care that much about. That is not that uncommon, right? Now, again, there's also plenty of individuals who love what their organization does and believe in it, and that aligns with their highest values and their highest aspirations. That's possible as well. But there's an impact to either one of those. So for you to identify with your organization's goals, that's not guaranteed. It also doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily have to, but you must align with something that you get from doing the work that your organization needs from you, or else you're not going to do it for very long. I think it might have been Cheyenne that mentioned earlier that about turnover. It's one of the challenges for certain organizations. Why would somebody want to leave your organization? They're not going to be paid after they leave. Maybe there's competition and someone else will hire them. That's possible. But if not, chances are the reasons why they're not sticking around is because it's painful for them to work with that organization. Now, that might just be the management they work with, the way that they communicate, how they feel when they go to work. But otherwise, it also could simply be they don't feel like there's any reason for them to show up. They may feel a lack of motivation to be there. That doesn't mean it's painful. It's just a lack of interest on their part. So all these different motivational forces are at play in terms of performance. And these are the things that sometimes for many managers, they're blind to. They're just thinking about, here's the goal. We know we can access it. We have this technology. Much of what I've already heard today is a big focus on how are we going to get there and what technology or software or people do we need in order to get there. That's great. You're already a master, chances are, of knowing what it takes to get somewhere. That's phenomenal. Why wouldn't you get there then? The only reason why you wouldn't get there is because it's somewhere along the way, the internal resources, either yours or your team's, aren't aligned in a way that actually has them do whatever it takes to achieve the goal. And there's a lack of, call it, to simplify this, it's like there's a lack of commitment. So what I'm going to ask you to do right now, if you haven't already done this, is to write down your priority goal. You may not have shared it, and we only had time for a couple interactions here, but go ahead and just actually write it down on paper. Now you may say, well, Jeff, the company has it written down. That's okay. You write it down as well, because part of when you actually put pen to paper or type it, it actually gets you more involved with the goal. It has you thinking through the goal, because we think in words, right? So when you actually write those words down, you'll have a different perspective on that goal than just talking about it or just having heard it from somebody else. So please go ahead and write that down right now. Now, as you do that, I'm going to share with you one of the approaches that I've found so many successful organizations have used, and we use ourselves in our coaching programs to make sure that we drive those KPIs in a project towards the achievement of a goal. I'll go ahead and share a screen to do this. Actually, let me share an example first. Okay, got it. So again, we have a request for no one-on-one dialogue. So I hate to push back against that, but again, if you didn't hear earlier, the purpose of the dialogue that I'm having with you one-on-one is to give you examples of the very things that I'm covering. And also, if you're willing to work with me here, and that's totally up to you, you're going to come up with your own answers, and you'll be in a dialogue with me, even if it's not live here together. So I appreciate the perspective as well, and I promise you we're going to cover lots of information on top of the examples that we're going to cover. Hope that makes sense. So stay with me on that. But when, I'll give you an example from 100 years ago. There's a guy named Andrew Carnegie, ran a very large organization. I'm sure I won't get this exactly right, but there was an organization where they made steel. They made, steel blocks. And every day, the team would come to work, and the workers would have to construct these steel buildings, right? These steel contraptions, and they were not meeting their KPIs. Okay, they were not performing at the level that they really needed to. And so Carnegie showed up at the factory floor, and he talked to the foreman and said, "How many of these steel contraptions did your last team make?" Because there's different shifts. There would be the morning shift and the afternoon shift and the night shift. And they all did the same exact job. And the foreman said, well, the last team did 7. And so Carnegie took, I believe it was a big stick with a piece of chalk on it, and he wrote a big number 7 on the floor. And he said, okay, great. I'm going to make this note, and everyone is going to see that the last team did 7 of these. He came back a week later, and he said, what did the teams do in this last day? And he said, wow, the teams are actually doing a lot better. They're doing, the top team did 11, and the worst team actually did 9. And he said, okay. And he wrote the number 11 on the floor so everybody could see it. He came back several weeks later, and the worst performing team was producing 18 of those same exact contraptions that they were only doing 8 or 7 a month before. Now, what was going on there? What was happening was that Carnegie understood that when people could see the results and they could see what other people were producing and that what they were actually producing and compare it, it starts to become a game. Carnegie made performance into a game. They were already playing a game, but most of the teams did not know that they were in a game. They just knew they showed up to work, they got paid, they knew what the goals of the organization were, they knew how to produce the widgets, just like you brought up today. But what they didn't know and what they didn't appreciate was that this is a game where they could compete, where they could do better, where they could win, and they could also be measured on their performance in such a way where they'd feel differently about it. So what are the characteristics of a game? What makes a game a game? What do you think? Progress. Okay, so in a game, there's probably some way to measure progress. Call that a score, right? That's the word I would use at least. You know, hey, I know what the score is with the two teams that are competing. I know who's winning. What else? What are the other characteristics of a game?
I think targets.
Okay, say that again.
Targets.
Targets, goals, right?
Goals.
In every game that I know of, especially like in sports, it's like you know when you scored a goal. You know what the score is based upon, certain things that must be fulfilled, right? Really great. What else? What are the other characteristics of a game?
Yes.
Somebody said
focus on all KPI.
Okay, so there's certain personal and team KPIs, and then I think there were a couple chats here. There's teamwork, there's lessons in failure. Okay, there are losers in games, right? There's winners and there's losers. Let's be honest, right? There's teams that support each other. There's challenges. So you got the idea here. We all know what a game is, and we can tell when we're in one. But we don't. Sometimes we're in games that we don't know we're playing, and we not only may not even know how to win, but we don't even realize the game. By the way, if you know there's a game, doesn't mean your team does. Do they know the goal? Do they know the rules? Do they know what success and failure looks like? And what are the rewards that they get? What are the incentives for that? So now I'll share a screen and just give you a sense of how simple, and anyone can do this. This is some of the things that we do with our clients that we work with, literally one-on-one. We can also do this on a team basis as well, depending on the context. So now some of these are personal games and some of these are professional, but here is a client we worked with, and he's measuring over a 90-day period every single time that he gets up at a certain time and actually produces a certain result. And we can see him aiming towards the ultimate goal at the end of the third month. And this guy's making pretty good progress. You could see based upon our little Google sheet and our graphing that he's on a glide path to actually meet with the ultimate goal on each of these metrics. Here's an example of this particular. You can see probably already, those of you who are great with watching metrics, you can see that this individual and the KPIs that he's working on, he was not on his way to achieve the goal. You can see it just by the average direction, the ultimate angle of attack of the glide slope, that this is not going to reach the ultimate goal that he has for A-list prospecting, for captured A-listers, or even for research, for that matter. Doing a little bit better on research, though. This is a coach we've worked with for the last 90 days, and he just finished his game. These are literally games that they play, that they set up the metrics. They know what winning and losing looks like. And you can see some of the time he was not quite on track for his goal. Like this one, I love this one. You could see he was not going to achieve his ultimate goal until the very last week, scored 29 corporate proposals that he needed to actually achieve in order to, he actually exceeded his goal at the end of all that, right? And the same with his webinars. So you can get a sense of this. Can you imagine had we not been playing this game? Hope you guys can see this on my screen. With this particular game of corporate proposals, had Paco in this case, lives in South America, had Paco not been playing this game, it's guaranteed that he wouldn't have made those 29 corporate proposals the last week before the game was over. This is like hitting the goal that won the game the very last minute of the game. And the reason why he did that was he's competitive enough to want to win, but had he not thought of the game, had he not seen the score, he would not have been that productive. He probably wouldn't have achieved half of what he achieved during that 90-day period. And this is something that you, as a technology-enabled executive, could do with any member of your team, or you could even have a coach doing it, or you could have them managing their own process or their own progress in that in that conversation as well. Not complicated. So my question for you would just be, where could you employ clarification of goals so that the personal and professional or personal and organizational goal for each of the members of your team is something that they're aware of and they're aligned with, even if they don't necessarily love the goal for the organization. What could be the incentives for that? And then second, how can you gamify, what we call gamify, how could you set this up so that it's a game for them? It's a game that they want to win. It's a game they know the score and they understand and appreciate the rules. Not just because you're telling them this is what you have to do for your job. As I think Cheyenne mentioned earlier in our personal interaction, there's plenty of people that will just leave. They just won't work for you anymore if they don't appreciate that it's a game that they could win, or it's a game that they care about, or it's even a game at all. They may not be clear on where things are and why they're even there. So if they can get clear on the goal, the purpose, what's in it for them, etc., and then you actually turn it into a game where they can measure it and they see how they're doing, watch their productivity increase. It's not guaranteed, okay? There's no doubt. This doesn't necessarily work for every single member of your team, but the likelihood of them improving their performance is very, very high. Any questions about this point and anything we've just covered with that first piece? And then we're going to go ahead and move on.
Yeah, I just have a comment, Jeffrey. I think you're absolutely right about the goals and seeing the targets. Most of the time in Pakistani organizations here, when employees are working in organizations, they are given targets or goals, but sometimes they are not very clear and they're not very not written down properly. So that and people are not sure what exactly to measure. Whether it's somebody mentioned that do we have a example for a NGO, but I think this is relevant to any organization, whether it's a NGO or it's a corporate sector or it's a government sector or private sector, any organization. To me, seeing the game is what I'm understanding is very critical. Even for myself, if I am very clear about where I want to go and what are the targets to achieve that, then it becomes more clear and I can visualize and see achieving those numbers. Like the example that you gave, the person was watching his KPIs and then he realized that he's not achieving his target, so he pushed hard for it. So yeah, that's something it's very important in every organization.
So the coaching I would offer you on this one, and then we're going to move on, is to write down for yourself. And again, this is something you can write down based upon what we just talked about, I would guess. How could you gamify? How could you turn your goal into a game? What is the game you need to play in order to achieve your goal? And by the way, if it's an organization goal, if you know, hey, I've got 50 people working for me and they all need to come together as a team to achieve this goal, how could you gamify that goal for them? How could it be a team game? What are the individual games that they have to play on their own in order to come together to achieve that ultimate goal as an overall result? And then how can they see that in a visual fashion over a period of time as well? How could you track it? Whatever answers you come up with, write them down. They could be very valuable for the action items that might be a part of how you could lead that charge for yourself or your team. Okay, great. We've got some more priority goals coming through. So I'll come back to those. I really appreciate you guys sharing in the chat. We're going to move on for the interest of time. We've got quite a lot more to cover. So I'm going to cover how to unlock your knowledge workers' resources and foster collaboration so you can encourage innovation and navigate complex economic challenges. So we just talked about games, and we talked about approaching a goal as a target and making it a game you can win or your team can win. Every team, every player on a team needs, if they're going to optimally play the game, in other words, and let me clarify, if they're going to be at their highest performance level, every one of them needs a coach. They all need a coach. If you look at any team in your area, I guarantee every one of them has some kind of leader or coach, somebody who is actually bringing the team together, getting a clear strategy, showing them what the performance metrics are. It's in sports, in organizations, you could call them a manager or an executive, but everybody has a coach somewhere. Or if they don't, now we know why they're not performing that well. So coaching is a different kind of approach to improving and fostering collaboration and achieving KPIs and goals than just leading and managing, than training, and it's also different than just being the boss who says, this is your job, go do it as well. That's a part of being in an organization, of course, as a leader. But coaching is a different conversation. And so I'll give you the definition of coaching. Coaching is a conversation between a coach and the team or the team member. It's just a conversation. The purpose of which is to support the team or the individual in their desired result or goal and what is important to them. I'm going to share that one more time. Coaching is a conversation between the coach and the player, the coach and the team. The purpose of which is to support the team in the desired results and goals that they have and what's important to them. So I think, I can't remember who brought it up, but just a few minutes ago, somebody said, well, I have my own goals and then there's the organization's goals, and I need to be aligned in the organization's goals, but they're very long term. Well, if you have a coach, from my definition of what coaching as a conversation is, that coach, their job, their commitment to you as your coach is to have a conversation with you that supports your goals, what's important to you. Now, it's an understandable question to ask. You might say, well, Jeff, the organization's goals are what matters here, not just the individual's. And the bottom line is that individual, if their goals cannot be met as they do what they need to in the organization to support the organization's goals, that individual will not be a productive member of that team. They might not quit, but they're just gonna take their paycheck and they will not be very helpful. It probably would be better not even to have them on the team. So if I'm a coach working for your organization, I'm coaching some member of your team, I'm there to help them with what they're after. That's my job. That is my commitment. Now, if what they're after is not helpful to the organization, they probably shouldn't be on your team in the first place. However, if you have a team member that really loves the goals of your organization and is dedicated and committed to those, and their values and goals are aligned with the organization's, if I coach them and I'm there supporting them on what's important to them and their goals, that's going to help the organization as well. Why? Partly because they're aligned, right? The other reason is because, well, wow, I have this coach who's here because I'm working with this organization. I don't ever want to leave this organization because I'm getting all this support. And so what we find is that your team usually is not as productive as they need to be. They're usually not collaborating with you, and they're not innovating, and they're not navigating complex economic challenges because they simply are not getting the support that they need. That's just the truth of it. And as organizations, as leaders, as individual contributors to your team, we get so busy and we get so caught up in doing the work that we got to do today, we forget to support the very people that are keeping the organization alive. We forget to coach and support them in what they're after so that they're so motivated and dedicated to taking care of the rest of the organization that we are not going to have to worry about that. Now, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't create a game and track the KPIs and understand the technology. I mean, yes, that's part of your responsibility. But don't forget that your team needs you. Your team needs a coach. Every individual is going to need a coach, or else they're not going to operate at their optimal. And this is what I see. I literally have not met an organization yet. I've worked with organizations that whatever organization you run, your organization is small compared to those organizations. Shell Oil, multi-billion-dollar organization, is largest by revenue in the world. We coach their engineers on their offshore oil rig platforms. And until our organization, our partners came in and actually trained them on how to work together and the goals and KPIs that they were working on, and had literally calling the oil platform every other week to have coaching sessions with them, they were not operating at optimal. They just weren't. Do you think Shell has good managers? Do you think they know how to run an organization? You think they understand technology? You bet they do. just as well as anybody else that you'll ever meet, including you, chances are. They were not missing how to get their goals. They were not missing resources. It's not that they didn't have enough money or enough customers. Their people were not supported in a coaching conversation that truly supported their people at the level that they could. And the throughput in that organization in moving the engineers into a management level where they can collaborate on their team was tremendous. All it took was being willing to support them. So now I define coaching. I'll tell you what coaching is also what is not, because this is an easy mistake to make. Coaching is not telling. It's not just telling people the way it is. It's not teaching. Now, by the way, couldn't you teach your people? Could you train them? Of course you can. But that's not what coaching is. Coaching is not forcing. It's not saying, hey, you have to do this or else, right? Now, again, do you need to make sure there are rules and standards in a game that they can win and they may also lose? Sure. That's part of running an organization. But that's not, strictly speaking, what a coaching conversation is about. Coaching conversation is supporting them, as I mentioned. And those things may come in part into the conversation, but that's not ultimately what coaching is. The best practices of coaching are that when you work with your team member, you're coaching them, sorry about that interruption. When you're coaching your individual that you're coaching them, you have an equal partnership with them. Every perspective, yours and theirs, is totally valid. The team or individual that you're coaching, they're the star. Not you as the leader, not you as the coach. I mean, the coach usually isn't even in the game, right? They're on the game. They're in the game. They're the one that has to play and win. They're the star of the game. Nobody is right or wrong. Every perspective is valid. And you're part of what you do as a coach, the best practice is that you seek to understand and you seek to clarify. For those that didn't tune out when I was having those one-on-one interactions that we had a couple complaints about, I was consistently seeking to understand what the goal was, what was going on with, at that time, one of my clients that I'm working with right now, right? So that is part of my job as a coach, is to understand and clarify what's happening. There's so often we see a lack of clarity between a manager or a coach and the team member, and then there's no clear idea of what's going on in the organization, whether it's the game or the goals or the KPIs. There's something that's just not clear. And then you have confusion, and that confusion ultimately leads to chaos. There is no control in that. So if you're out for having better control, better influence in the team members to really play full out and to meet their goals, this is exactly the kind of conversation that you might want to look into if you haven't had it already. It doesn't mean you're the one to do it, but at least facilitate that. And finally, in coaching, the best practice is to support the team or individual in their own goals, concerns, and desires. Their own goals, concerns, and desires. That disinterest in the conversations I was having with some of you, that's where, as a coach, you want to get interested in someone else's goal. You want to get interested in someone else's concern. You want to get interested in someone else's desire, not just your own. Now, hopefully they're interested in yours too. Or hopefully they care about the organization. You've got to hire for that, obviously, as well. But if you don't show that to them, then it's going to be very hard to fully support them in what they're after, because the motivation probably won't be there if nothing else. So this is what we would call appreciative inquiry. I'm inquiring, I'm asking, and then I actually appreciate what the answer is. I'm not just asking to ask. I'm not just asking to get your answer and just write it down. Like, I don't really care. I'm just asking because it's my job as your coach. I'm asking because I literally appreciate whatever the answer is going to be.
The tough question.
And I'm going to communicate with questions. Somebody said, why would people be interested in somebody's personal goal? Is it realistic? Here's one reason. You're on the team with them, and your survival and success depends on their productivity and success as well. How's that? If you're on the team and you work with these individuals in an organization, their personal goal, if you don't care about their personal goal, you have no interest in that, they're not going to have an interest in helping. They'll leave, or they will become disengaged. It's a nice HR buzzword, right? And as they leave or are disengaged, then you have more problems in your organization. You have a harder time achieving your organization's goals. And then the reason why you didn't achieve the goal is going to be, well, you know what? The people aren't doing their jobs. And then I'll just come back to the very thing I just shared with you. Interested in their goals, interested in what they want, interested in what they're getting from the job, what they're getting from the team, why they want to play the game in your organization. So if for no other reason, you don't have to care about them per se. You don't have to agree that you should be interested in their goal per se. But at least admit and realize that if their work and their success is going to contribute to, or that your success and your organization's success hinges on them actually helping out at the greatest level possible. If that's part of the reality of your organization, then ultimately you must be interested in them, or they will not be interested in you. It's simple reciprocation. This is part of just human nature. If I just take from you and take from you and take from you, do you think there's a point where you're going to stop giving? Right? But if I give and give and give and give and give, not like I'm never going to expect anything back, but I really give from you, at some point you will probably feel the need to give something back to me or back to my organization and what I need as well. That's just part of human nature, right? And we live in a world, every human being on earth, to some level, we depend on each other, right? Especially in an organization. With your team, right? So if I depend on you as a part of my team, I better be interested in your goals. Really great question, though. I appreciate the question. So, guys, for the interest of time, we'll go ahead and move on, and I'm going to move over to how to unlock your knowledge workers Other keys to unlocking resources, excuse me. Motivation. We've already talked around this a little bit. Part of each member of your team is whether or not they actually have a desire, like they care, like they have a craving and an interest in doing the things that you require of them. And that requires what we would call motivation. Motivation is simply having the forces of pain and pleasure, right? These are the two things that control everybody's behavior on earth, right? Whether you feel like it's important enough for you to do something because it would help you alleviate or lessen the pain that you experience today. There's all sorts of different pains. And then secondly, pleasure. Like, what are the things that you want, that you desire, that would feel really good for you, that if and when you actually do them, you actually feel even better, right? That is the simplest way I can explain motivation. There's much deeper aspects to it, no doubt. But ultimately, if I'm going to be a good coach and I want to unlock your resources in your team or your team's resources, I want to appreciate what their motivations are. Another great answer to the question, why would we be interested in somebody else's goals? Is that even realistic? Well, let's put it this way. It's not always normal for a person to do that, right? We're interested in ourselves more than anything, right? But it is totally realistic if you appreciate the art of how to do it, and it's part of your job to produce it. If you're not in a leadership position, that may not be your job, right? And that's totally fine, right? But if you're in a leadership or executive, coaching, management position, ownership position where you depend on other people, that is definitely part of your job, no doubt. So motivation is a way to unlock resources. If it's important enough for me to produce a result, I have enough motivation, the likelihood of me producing that result goes way up. Now, maybe it's impossible, right? But if it's at all possible, enough pain, enough pleasure that's driving me, I'm going to produce that result. Now, by the way, you can produce pain with somebody and they end up hating you for it, right? And then they quit and they don't want to work for you, right? So obviously you've got to be artful. You have to be intelligent about how do you tap into your team's pain and pleasure. And again, if I'm interested enough and asked enough questions like, why do you want this? What's so important about it? What will happen if you don't achieve this goal? How will that feel? What ultimate pain will you feel if you don't actually follow through on this? If I tap into enough of your own motivation, that motivation actually starts to increase. Are there not things that are painful or pleasurable for you in your life right now that when you don't think about it, they don't really motivate you? It's like, out of sight, out of mind. Like, I'm not even thinking about it. But if I ask you, what's the biggest pain that you're afraid will happen that drives you or that could motivate you, you might start feeling that, and you're going to start doing a lot more work. So that's one key to unlocking resources within your team. The second one is beliefs and values. Again, we were talking about what are their goals, but why somebody has a goal is because there's something that's important to them. There's a really important priority that they have in their life, in their organization, in their career. I think Jelani said, I want to get promoted. I want a promotion, right? Why would Jelani want to help the team achieve their goals? Well, he gets a promotion for that. That is a value for him. It's not just a goal, it's something important, right? So I'll give you an example. There is an individual, I talked to this coach today who works with an individual who runs a multinational agrochemical business, I believe, across the Middle East and Africa. And very successful business, does billions of dollars every year. And he's trying to hold his team accountable, just like what we talked about before. He's trying to set up KPIs and having them report the results. He set up the accountability for them. He told them what they need to do to report in their results. They ignored him. Didn't even pay any attention. Literally just had this conversation with the coach today. And so the coach's client, he was giving up. It was like, you know what? I'm making okay money. It's okay. I guess I can't get the results with this team. They're already doing their job for the most part. So I guess I should just be happy with what I have. And you could literally hear him giving up. Let me show you. I'm going to show you his psychographic profile. This is a tool that we use in coaching to understand values. I'll bring it up right now. You should see it on my screen in just a couple seconds. Okay. I didn't really need a full screen that, but I will. Okay, so let me just pull up the highlighter here. So for this is the CEO's values and what we call their behavioral style, which is, think of this like their instinctual reactions to things. And this graph shows metrics of their emotional priorities, what I would call motivators or values. Now, what we've discovered is that this individual had a conflict. This is the economic value. You'll notice that it's the highest out of all this individual's values. Economic value is just wanting to get the most of everything. So clearly, this particular CEO, he's very motivated to grow his business, right? However, this individual also has what we call a high I. This is an instinctual reaction that generally is not ever changed. It's just kind of, think of it as genetic, like it's just a part of your DNA. And for this particular CEO, what that I means is that he needs people to like him, he needs to please people, and he needs to be connected to or friends with people. And by the way, this is applied to all people, everybody that he works with, everybody in his family. And so these two parts of his psychology, this economic driver that drives him to want to succeed and grow his business, and this need to make people happy, to please them, to connect with people, they're conflicting with one another. This is what we would call a me-me conflict. I'm conflicting with myself. He has conflicting motivations. He wants to make more money and grow the organization, but he also wants to be everybody's friend. By the way, a couple of you brought this up earlier, and when you were telling me how I should run this particular event, you were not trying to be my friend. My guess is probably you're one of the leaders in your community. It's one of the reasons why you were willing to say those things. Even as I was running and leading this workshop that you decided to attend today, because I'm supposed to have some value to add to you. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody will do that. Why? Because a lot of times people are just trying to be friendly, and that in this case, was stopping this particular CEO from maximizing his business because he set up the KPIs, he did everything he needed, and then they ignored him. And then when they ignored him and didn't follow through, he didn't do anything. What would happen if that CEO had held that team accountable for breaking their promise and their commitment to actually follow through? The answer is simple. He probably would not have been liked. And while I love it when you like me, I love it when we can be friends, I don't need you to like me. I'm your coach. You may hate me for what I said or the game I set up or the coaching I gave you or the correction I offered. And I'm totally okay with that because you might hate me during the coaching session, but you're loving me when we go to war. You're loving me when we go to competition with whoever you're competing with that wants to destroy your business because you're going to get that economic result, right? So this individual hadn't gotten to that point yet because he was still trying to decide between doing what's necessary for his business and meeting his own need for acceptance, his own need for friendship with the team members that work for him. So he needed to change this, or at least take ownership of it and be responsible for the fact that he's putting being liked above making the best business decision versus the other way around. Because there is going to be times when you got to make a decision for your team. They're not going to like you for it. It's not going to be popular. You know, you might have some dirty looks. You might have some people that maybe, you know, they're not your friend for now. That's part of business, right? Now, it's great. Again, like I said, it's great if you can maintain a friendship, but you can't always do that. It's business, right? So, by the way, I asked this particular coach, tell me about this individual's personal life. And he talked about his family and his marriage and his kids, and he was very, very happy. But then he went on, because this particular coach had worked with this particular client, this CEO, for several years now. So they had a lot of conversations, a lot of individual conversations. And he said he's got a problem with his father. He always wants to please his father. His father is a very successful businessman. He's always wanted to be good enough for his father. And he's driven and motivated to try to make his father happy, to try to get his father's attention, to try to get his father's what we call approval. His father, like, say, you did good, son, right? He's looking for that, and he never got it. And so he's got this problem, which is he's very motivated, he's hungry, but it's all about trying to make his father happy, not about him making himself happy. And I realized the very pattern I just shared with you, this need to please, this need to be friends, he's playing this pattern out with his father. I asked this coach, how old is this CEO? He says he's 39 years old. 39 years old. And his particular emotional pattern, his motivations and beliefs and values, the way they're set up, are set up the way maybe a 15-year-old would act, trying to make dad happy, right? Rather than deciding his own mission in life and going for it regardless of what his father decides. And I understand there's some traditions where you always have to make dad happy, right? And the way your parents see you is critically important. But I could tell you, regardless of the rules of your particular location, that in that psychology, if you're only driven by what somebody else wants, you'll never know your own motivations. You'll have a lack of motivation, and then you'll be asking, why aren't I willing to work? Why aren't I willing to do whatever it takes to achieve my goals? Maybe there's something going on there like this. I don't know. So I told this coach, I said, what this individual probably needs to do, if he's really going to take control of his team and do what's necessary, even when they hate him, even when they don't like him, and if he needs to fire somebody, he needs to remove them from the team, he does what's necessary. He needs to handle and get complete his issues with his father and get over that. That's probably the scariest problem for him. But if he can do that with his father, he'll never have this fear again. And he will take control of his organization like never before. And that will benefit his entire organization and him as well. So when we talk about these individual issues, these individual challenges, these motivations and you're questioning whether we should talk individually and share that, whether we should be interested in somebody else's goals, whether we should care about their motivation or their beliefs or values, let me just tell you, there's all sorts of hidden issues that every team member that you work with has, and you don't know what they are. By the way, maybe you don't need to know, but somebody probably needs to know, a coach, a manager, somebody who's a part of that team that actually cares. Sometimes when we set up coaching KPI games, so to speak, we'll actually have lateral members of the team, people that are on the same level in the leadership structure, coach each other. They're not even necessarily professional coaches, but just somebody that cares, just somebody that's interested, just somebody that asks, why do you feel this way? What are your motivations? What is important to you? And setting their interests aside for a second and just helping that individual. That's my job as a coach, and any coach that's working on your team or that you hire should also hopefully set their own interests aside to actually serve at that level. Not just what they want, but what they really need and what their motivations are. And when you discover what those issues are, now I can see why you're not producing the results. Now I can see why your resources are so, you have the blind spot that you have and you can't see what's possible. Those blind spots come from within, not from the outside, 99% of the time. So the question I would leave you with on this piece, and then we've got one more piece to cover, and then we will complete this morning, and I really appreciate you staying late with me. Where is coaching like this needed in your business? Where in your business do you have individuals or teams that you know they could do better? You know that they have more resources within them. Maybe they don't act like they do, but you know better, right? Because as the leader or somebody that's on the outside looking in, where could coaching make a difference with team members or with the teams that you work with or with you on that basis? To tap into something that once it's tapped into, all of a sudden the blinders come off and there's more possibilities, there's more perspective, there's more time, there's more energy, there's more commitment, there's more courage. Those are the human resources. A couple of you said, I'm in with human resources. Those are the human resources that we need on our teams. And every human being on earth has them within them because we all share the same brain, right? We all have basically the same neurology. And if you have the same neurology, you have a different life, different mom and dad, right? Different experience, different station, different position, different education, but we all have similar brains. And so those brains all have very amazing strengths, but they also have weaknesses. And those weaknesses sometimes can make a team member look like they're broken. And I'm here to tell you that nobody's broken. It's that we don't see what's not working yet. And a coach's job, and if you're going to be the coach, that's your job. If you're hiring a coach, it's the coach's job that you hire. It's their job to find out where is something not quite connecting yet. What's the hidden issue that once it's resolved, it doesn't stop them anymore. And the metrics that I showed you just a second ago, I will never coach anybody without running those assessments on them. When you're hiring new team members, you should be running some kind of psychographic profile, not just check their education, interview them, see what kind of work they've done, make sure they have the technical knowledge. I want to know how their brain works too. I want to know that as well. So I'm going to share in this last point that I promised that we would cover. Actually, we had a question come in. I'm going to go ahead and answer that, and then I'll cover that, I promise. Can a supervisor be a coach in an organization? Yes, they can. Absolutely. Now, the only warning I would give, and I think I mentioned this earlier, if I'm your supervisor, part of my job is to make sure you follow through, to make sure you hit certain KPIs, and if you don't, that might be a problem for you, right? There might be a lot of pain there. So sometimes as somebody who's a supervisor, CEO, somebody who's a manager in an organization, the people that report to us that we supervise, sometimes they don't want us to know when they're not quite achieving what we expect, right? So we get what they call CEO disease, which is basically that what's happening in our organization, we don't even know because nobody wants to tell us because they know that that would be painful for them. So the danger of a supervisor doing the job of the coach is that as a coach, you need to be able to be honest with me, fully honest with me. And I don't necessarily expect that day one, right? Okay, we got to get to know each other, have a feeling of safety there. But at some point, we got to get to the truth. Without the truth, there's no possibility for changing the game, the things that really matter. So if you as a supervisor, if the people beneath you, for whatever reason that you're supervising, are afraid to tell you what's really going on, and they don't feel safe, that's going to be a challenge for you to be in a coach role with them. So one of the things I do recommend for many organizations, and by the way, if you're a coach or consultant, this is a perfect opportunity for you to actually really add value and also get paid for that job, is to hire somebody on the outside who doesn't, they're not going to fire this person. They aren't in control of whether or not this person is going to be successful at the organization. That makes it so that with some confidentiality, so that they're not going to tell all the secrets to everybody else, which is part of what I would suggest as a coach is ethically, that they can share anything and everything with that coach, and that coach can help them in ways that most people will not, because the truth doesn't come out with most people. So that's a very, it's a real opportunity, and it's a profound privilege for the coach to do that, and it's a really beautiful gift that you can give a team member as well, for somebody that where there's no impact on what's really going on, even if it's not a good thing for the organization. It's better that a coach hear about that. So if you're the supervisor, what my best advice for you, or my best coaching for you, would be, look, when you're in the coach role with those individuals, you want to tell them, look, anything you tell me during this time, it doesn't have, like, I'm not going to account for that as your supervisor. It's my job to serve you. Remember what we talked about before with those best practices of coaching? It's like you got to make sure that you're interested in what's valuable to them, what's important to them, not what's important to you as a supervisor. That's where that hierarchy needs to flip. Normally it's, hey, what does the boss want? I got to do everything to serve the boss. If as the boss, you're going to be the supervisor, you've got to turn that around, and your job is to support that individual and serve them. It's a challenge to do that. Not always possible. Okay, so I hope that answered that question. Final piece that I wanted to share with you tonight, or sorry, tonight for me and this morning for you, it's getting late in the morning, how to attract and retain top talent and drastically reduce your employee turnover and attrition rate so you can maximize your return on human capital. We've been building to this entire hour. We've talked about the goals and KPIs and improving productivity. We've talked about collaboration and fostering that collaboration so you can tap into answers and resources within your team. But ultimately, you need the most talented people on your team, and make sure that you keep them around and keep them performing better and better, if any of that is going to be possible, right? Your people ultimately are how your organization is going to run, unless it's going to just be a big job for you. That's the difference between a business and a job. A business runs without you, and a job depends 100% on you. So I'll give you a couple points to this, very simple ones. Number one, if you want to attract and retain top talent, be the best place to work. Be the best place to work. Now, again, I love that question. Like, why is it realistic to be interested in what your team wants? Well, if you're going to be the best place to work, that better be realistic. Because somebody else, maybe a competitor, is listening to me talk about this right now, or someday they may see a video about that I didn't even share, but somebody else does, and they start to realize, wow, I got to start getting interested in my employees and what they want, and they're going to do it. And when they do that and you don't, they're going to win and you're going to lose. That's the reality. Now, maybe your marketplace is not that competitive just yet, but if there's good money to be made, I bet you it will be eventually. So if you want to sustain that advantage that you have, maybe you want to be the market leader in that area. So be the best place to work. And that means many different things, of course. Maybe you're the most successful business of your type. Maybe you pay the most. You have the best pay, right? Some people just go to work just because, hey, I can make the most money here. That's okay. Maybe you have the best team already, and great people want to work with other great people. Just because they enjoy collaborating with the best, because they're the best. So now you can say, well, Jeff, will be the best place to work, be successful, pay the most, and have the best teammates. Well, easy for you to say, right? Like, you don't have my business. So if you're not the best place to work today, how do you become the best place to work? Because again, it's easy to say, be successful, pay the most, and have the best teammates. But what if you don't? What if you don't have the money to pay? What if you've got not great teammates right now? That's just who you've got working on your team. What if you're third or fourth or fifth in the marketplace and you're one of the lower tier businesses on your competitive landscape? What do you do then? How do you become the best place to work? Well, first of all, if you're not successful, I can't just tell you become successful. Anybody could say that, right? And if you don't pay a lot, I can't just say pay more. Maybe you can't afford to pay more right now. That might kill your business. But if you don't have the best teammates, that's something that any business can work on. It doesn't mean you can get the best teammates tomorrow, but I would start with your team. The right team will lead to more success. More success leads to more money, usually, right? That's how we measure success unless we're not for profit. And more money leads to you being able to pay your team members more handsomely, more. Better pay attracts better team members. So if you can find better team members, even if you can't pay them that much, even if you're not the most successful today, but if you just find a way to get better team members, then the rest of it will improve over time. Does that make sense? So how do you do that? How do you upgrade your team? First of all, we talked about this the entire time we were here. Treat them like a team. Treat them like a team. So many business leaders don't treat their team like they're actually a team. They just treat them like they just have to do what they have to do, and that's the job. There's no team. There's no collaboration. There's no coach. There's no support. There's no game. All the things we talked about, like half those things aren't even there. So treat your team like a team. If you just did half of what we talked about in this morning, you'll be doing that to some extent at least. You'll definitely have a great start. So treat your team like a team. That means provide them with some coaching, provide them with some accountability, show them the game that they're playing. Can you imagine a team? They go out into the field. There's a ball. There's an opposing, they've got competitors on the playing field, and they're like, okay, well, what do we do? What do we do with this ball? Anybody know? What do we do? Right? So having that kind of clarity of treating your team like a team, that's a great start. And most teams are not treated like teams. Second, if you can't increase pay, can you add incentives to motivate the team? And not all incentives are money. They can be. But if there's certain team members, there's certain groups, I think Cheyenne shared earlier in our conversation today about how if this goal is achieved, that they're going to save the equivalent of an individual salary. So if you do that, then my job, if I'm a good coach, if I'm running my team well, is probably to give you some of that as a bonus, some of that as an incentive, right? Now that you may not always do that. That kind of depends on a lot of different aspects. But I don't necessarily have to have that money today. I can say, look, you save us that one year salary. Once you're done with this project, over the next year, I'm going to pay you 10% of that as an extra bonus. That's money that you will have found because your employee performed. You don't have to pay them up front necessarily. So you can incentivize, you can create incentive structures, money and otherwise. Not all employees want money. I don't know if you saw, but on the graph that I brought up a couple minutes ago, there are many different values that someone might have in a career. Learning and teaching, intellect, knowledge, even contribution. Some people just want to go to work so they can help, So there's all sorts of different motivations with an organization. How can you serve those values in an incentive? Hey, if you accomplish this particular task, I'm going to give you some schooling. We're going to train you on this thing. Sometimes people who value learning, that's a tremendous upside for them. They'll be very motivated just by that, even if you don't pay them more. So if you can work to discover what the motivations on each individual team member are, and again, we can run metrics to discover that, you can incentivize to those, and that's not always money. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it has nothing to do with money. So either increase pay or add incentives to motivate the team, which could include pay, might not. And finally, I'm going to share this with you on a couple slides here. You can also benchmark success. So you should see this in just a second. So what we've done with many organizations is use those same profiling tools, what we call psychographic technology, to assess what's going on inside. Not just on the outside of somebody's education and what they've done already, but I want to know how they do what they do. I want to know what their behavior is, what their instincts are. I want to know why they do what they do, what their values are, because that's where the incentives are going to come from. I also want to know what they're able to do. Like, what are actual skills that I can't measure just by seeing your resume or interviewing you? So, and we can intervene with a lot of different areas in a business. We can work with the talent, HR, that's your job. We can work with the management. Obviously, we're doing that today. And we can also work with your system. I think somebody mentioned earlier systemizing. We really ultimately want to work with all three and getting them to work together cohesively. That's the ideal. But specific to talent, we're back to the upgrading your team here. You want to know what makes your talent the best. And so I want to use these profiling tools, not just for coaching and management, but to actually select and acquire talent. And so why would you do this? Why would you actually look at somebody's psychographic profile, which basically is a graph of what's going on inside their head, their mindset, as I mentioned before. The mindset is what predicts the resourcefulness and the resources that someone will bring to the table. So the reason is, first of all, skills. I could teach a lot of skills. In fact, I can hire you for cheaper if you don't have the skills already, and then actually have you onboard those skills for more cheaply, right? More easily. Most can be taught. They're easily measurable, and skills are not enough. Somebody might be able to do a job, but maybe they will not do the job. They maybe leave. If I only hire for experience, I'm probably going to pay more for experience because you've proven you can do the job, right? So, and also some people will bring bad experience, like they worked for another organization that let them, not really work that hard, let's say, or they might poison your team and tell them how to get away with more and how not to do the job. Can they even still learn at some point? So experience is not always a great thing. And finally, psychology. Like I said, psychology tells us and predicts what resources and resourcefulness is available. Psychology is invisible. And how do you know what their psychology is? Do you want to use your intuition? Are you going to interview them and try to feel them out? It's actually predictable that interviews are very, very inaccurate. Your candidate, when they want to get a job, they're dating you. They're trying to, they're giving you their best look, right? They're not always honest about exactly what you can expect from them. And when you interview them, that's less accurate than flipping a coin. That's based upon a Michigan State University study that showed that 86% of hiring decisions made from a job interview are actually incorrect. Psychology, as we've talked about this entire time, drives performance, and assessments are the most accurate predictor of job performance. In that same Michigan State University study, they were able to accurately predict, once they benchmarked the psychology for a particular position, who was going to perform and who was not going to perform in a position. When you show me what's required in a position and you show me the top and bottom performers of that position, I can predict your next hire as to whether or not they're going to succeed or they're going to fail. Let me show you how. So let's say you want to buy this car. Well, how would you know? Well, what you would do is you would look under the hood of the car to see the mechanics, the engineering, the technology. Does it work well? Now, when I look at a candidate, in this case, we were doing this for Vitamix, so we have a Vitamix demonstrator here. Are you going to hire this candidate? Well, you can't look under her hood, right? You can't see what's going on underneath. So everybody looks the same from the outside, or somewhat the same. Maybe they dress a little different. So which one of these people do you invest all your capital, training, time, resources, and trust in, and then you bet the future of your company on? There's a lot riding on the next person that you hire. On the surface, you can't see which one to decide on. Most people would research the inner workings of a $100,000 car. Why wouldn't you research the inner workings of a $100,000 candidate? And the truth is, So many organizations don't, but you really need to, because that, like I said, it drives success. Two people may have similar qualifications and experience on paper, but inside, they can be worlds apart. They can be totally different people. So we can already see that, for instance, with salespeople, that same value that we showed in that CEO a little bit earlier, most top sales leaders, at least in the US, are driven by economics. There's a reason for that, because the incentives are aligned with that. But we can predict that. We know that the bottom performing salespeople are much, much lower economic. This is a graph of the instincts, what we call the DISC, or the behavioral style. And we can see the top performers are on the left, the bottom performers are on the right, and you notice how the top performers are collected in a very specific quadrant. They're nearer to the D and the I. That's because they're more dominant, they're more people-oriented, they're more bottom line, they get to the results. That's, at least for the US, as a top salesperson, for almost any industry. So in this particular case, with this organization that we ran this study about 15 years ago, 4 bad hires could have been eliminated. Now, if you look at the actual cost of that on paper, and again, we're talking USD, so this obviously would vary depending on location, but it's analogous. If they're losing, let's say, 2 productive sales per month, and the revenue for that is 4,000 US, they're losing 8,000 a month. And then let's say before they're fired, it's 12 months, so they're losing 96,000 in productivity, total loss per hiring mistake. They made 4 bad hires. They lost almost $500,000 in 1 year of not having these metrics that they could have benchmarked at any point. When we actually ran this, they said, oh my gosh, we are literally losing millions of dollars every couple years simply because we're not using this to make the best hiring decision and find the best talent. So the way we handle this is we actually look at your top performing team members, and then we want to replicate them. In this case, not salespeople, but just any particular position that you would want to optimize for. So if you have a current pool of a particular job, a particular position, you can divide those into top and bottom quartile. So you've got your top performers, you got your bottom performers. I can run psychographic profiles on both of those quartiles, and every time we do this, we can identify key differences and basically the KPIs on the inside. And when we see those differences, we can hire based upon the new benchmark. Why would you ever hire the bottom people ever again and what you see in those particular metrics? And what you could do then when you make the next hiring decision is that you actually only start hiring top performing people, and you massively increase the top performers, and you end up eliminating your bottom performers. That radically increases your results right there. So whether it's selection or incentives or providing, the best high performance culture, there's many, many ways to attract and retain top talent and choose top talent and upgrade and optimize for your team. By the way, those same metrics, I think I demonstrated this just a little bit earlier, when we see what the values and behavioral instincts are on that team for that individual, the coach or the manager that works with that individual can leverage that to more deeply understand what their challenges are, what their limitations are, what their resources and skills are, what they value. We talked about coaching to their values before. You don't even have to ask them. You literally just see it in their graph. So this tool that we leverage with every client and many organizations that we serve not only helps to build the high performance team, but helps to coach and manage that high performance team, because we know what goes on inside their heads, and we know how to support them and coach them more accurately, even before we've even talked to them. Sometimes we'll just work with the manager and CEO. I don't even have to talk to the talent because I've got their graphs, and I can help you manage them better simply by seeing who you're working with on your team and what the challenges and what the motivations are, what their strengths and weaknesses are ultimately. So if you have a particular distinction from what we covered today that you want to employ, I'm going to ask you to do this. It's very, very simple. Whatever you've been taking notes on, wherever you've been writing this stuff down, I hope you've been writing some of the more important elements down. I want you to separate the next section, maybe a separate page, or bring up a new piece of paper. And on the top of that, I want you to write actions. Just write the word actions. Just write the word actions. Separate piece of paper, brand new page. And so the question I have for you is this. Based upon what you've learned today, based upon what we've been talking about, based upon any of the ideas that you were triggered to think about, even if it doesn't come from me, it just came from somebody else or came from something you were thinking about as we were talking, as I was maybe having one of these one-on-one dialogues with somebody else. What would you say are the most important actions that if you took them, it would really make a difference for you achieving your goals, for helping the organization achieve their goals? And whatever those actions are, whatever the most important actions are, when you write those down right now, you literally just number them, like action number 1, write that down. Action number 2, write that down. Because there's a big difference. There's a big difference between something you just learn and information and things that we conceptualize and all the theory about things and what you actually do. You could probably see this above my head here. It says doer versus thinker right there. I don't have that there for an accident. That is on my wall, and I see that every single day because I know I can learn all sorts of things from you or from an education, from reading a book, and that is completely worthless until I do something with it, until I take action on what I've learned. So whatever's been most valuable that you really agree with or it makes sense or you're not sure about but you're looking to explore and you think it could make a difference, write that down as an action. Separate those actions from all the theory and all the concept, and we've been talking about a lot of different ideas here. And just write that in one list. I mean, maybe you literally have like 1 or 2 actions. That's fine. It's probably better that you only have a few. You'll be more focused on those. And then what I'm going to ask you to do after we're done today is actually schedule those in your calendar, like when am I going to do that? Because if you schedule it and you take action pretty immediately on that, that could actually turn into success for you, for your organization, for the team that you serve. That's what makes the difference. So if you're in the game that we talked about before, if you're in the game, somebody who's on the field who knows the ball's got to go to a certain place in the hoop or the hole or wherever it is, depending on your game that you're playing, they don't just read about the game, they play the game. A coach needs players. So as you're writing whatever actions you're writing, the last promise we made was to talk about how to drive organizational transformation, changing an organization by aligning key stakeholders through enhanced communication so you can drive growth and sustainability amidst uncertainty. The landscape of your business, your competitors, your country, the world, constantly changing. If you notice over the last 6 months, there's been a lot of changes in the world, no matter where you are. Okay? So that's never going to stop. In fact, it's probably only going to accelerate. So how do you handle that and still grow when everything's changing around you? And the answer that I can give you today, for simplicity's sake, is you've got to change what you do. That's why that action list is critical. Change what you do. And then change what your team does. You can coach them and support them for that. But how do you do both in a way that's really clear, that actually is positioned against and indexed for the marketplace itself as it changes? Well, the answer to that is very simple. And you may do this. I don't know if you do or not. It's something that we call strategic planning. It's literally just putting down a written plan. So when's the last time that you spent at least 1 hour to write down a well-researched, well-prioritized, and well-organized plan to achieve the goal that you wrote down at the beginning of this conversation? More than that, more than an hour, not just like 30 minutes or, 5 minutes. When's the last time you took more than an hour to do that? When I ask business leaders this question, 9 times out of 10, they say, I can't even remember the last time I did. Can't even remember it. Last time I put down a written plan for achieving my goal or worked with my team, worked with my organization on spending more than an hour on putting down a prioritized, organized, well-researched plan. This is something anybody can do, but I'm telling you, nobody does. Nobody does. And then we wonder why our organization gets behind or why it's not actually achieving the goals, and we end up just trying to reduce costs, and we don't expand, and we don't grow, and we don't achieve what's possible. It's because the SMEs, the subject matter experts in your organization, they're not just not collaborating, they're not even planning, and they're not contributing to a plan that's well organized, well researched, and well prioritized. So there's 3 steps from what I've found and what I've facilitated with other organizations to a strategic plan. 3 steps, very simple. And I'll share these on slides. It probably don't even need to, but maybe having a visual will be helpful. Okay. We'll just full screen this for simplicity's sake. There are these 3 elements. Whoops, we went a little too big there. All right, so the first one is capture. That's the research portion. What are all the things that you've already done? Where's your organization arrived at today? What have you already accomplished? What kind of things are you still working on? What are your current goals already? And capturing, brainstorming all the ideas for what you could do and what you've already done in one place. This is usually a very overwhelming portion of the strategic planning process, because if you have a team of 5 people, you can have 5 captures, you're going to put them all together, you'll probably have like 300 items, right? Captures are very disorganized and they can be very overwhelming. That's okay. You're just researching and putting all the information in one place. The second step is prioritize. Now, not every idea, not every action, not every thought is equal. Some are more important than others. Your organization maybe is prioritizing cutting costs and reducing costs and increasing efficiency, where other competitors of yours are actually prioritizing growth and establishing market share. And yet others are prioritizing innovation and coming up with brand new products that'll make any of the products competing with them obsolete. Different priorities, different results, different goals, different plan. So out of all the things, all the ideas that you could capture, that your team can capture, that you personally can capture, you've got to decide what's important and what's not. You can't do everything. You don't have time. You don't have all the resources, speaking of resources. So there's a prioritization process where you've got to decide this is important, this is not. This is important, this is not. And then finally, once you know what the priorities are, you can organize it in a way that everyone on the team can understand. There's many different ways to do that, and I won't tell you that my way is the right way. But if you don't organize the plan in a way that you can share in writing with your team, how are they going to know what the game is? How are they going to know the KPIs? How are they going to know how what they do contributes to the greater mission? Those are some of the issues we did here to some extent today. So if you haven't put more than an hour into this process for the most important goals in your organization or for yourself in the last, let's say, year, then probably now is the time to consider at least scheduling that, maybe at the end of the year, maybe tomorrow. Find the time. If you spent 1 day a year just putting together a strategic plan, whether it's with or without your team, that's organized, prioritized, and well captured, well researched, that is less than 1% of your time. That's not a lot of time. But most people don't even put that time in. So it's totally doable, and it's not always easy because you're busy working the whole time, right? So you got to be willing to put that aside, because when you're a leader, when you're setting the pace, when you're running the organization, or if you're a coach, you got to know where you're going. You got to know what your goal is. You got to know how you expect to get there if you're going to help others get there. You better be the master of that. Because if you're not, then people will be looking for your help and they won't get the help that they need. Not because you don't know the answers, but because you haven't spent the time to own those answers so that then they can be executed. So if that's an action item for you, you could add that to your action list. And the final piece that I would offer you today, and if there's any other questions, I'm happy to stick around and answer them for you. I know we've had a lot in the chat, and I really appreciate that. I see some of our team members, Chris Thompson and Dr. Coiner, have been in and out and answering some of those. This is phenomenal. Appreciate you guys. For businesses, if you run a business or you have a business that you serve currently, if you'd like to talk to us about how you can apply these methods to your specific enterprise, or if you'd like to use our performance profiles in your business, the ones that we talked about today, to either acquire talent, measure the KPIs for talent, or benchmark your talent, or just coach your talent for that matter, then you can feel free to reach out to Salman, and he will work with you to schedule with us to actually discuss that. I'm happy to have that conversation with you. For coaches, if you're a coach, if you're a trainer, if you are a consultant, and you are really here to learn as much as you can about coaching technology and coaching techniques for organizations, especially hopefully business coaching. If you'd like to learn our methods, like to learn more about some of the details that we just scratched the surface on today, along with maybe getting some help on starting or growing your business, your coaching business, and the work that you do with organizations, I'm going to give you a link. I'm going to just put it in the chat. I'll chat it to everybody. And this is our resource page at Master Coach University. So it's going to be in the chat in just a couple seconds. And if you go to that link, there's a lot of different ways that you can learn different aspects of your coaching, your skill sets, your business, all the way from basics to the most advanced elements of coaching and working with businesses and individuals for that matter. So that's our resource page. It's just mastercoachuniversity.com/resources. And then, feel free to check out some of the resources available there. And finally, if you'd like to get your ICF credential, ICF, I mentioned this a little earlier in our conversation, International Coach Federation is the world-recognized standard in coaching competencies and coaching skills. Some of our staff, Dr. Kohner, for instance, is credentialed in some of the higher levels of the ICF competencies. The credentials are provided by ICF. And Master Coach University is accredited with the training hours that are required for you to achieve those different credentials. If you're working inside an organization, you may want to gain those skills and credentials just as a part of your career. If you're working as a consultant, trainer, or coach, you might want to utilize that as an independent contractor in your own coaching business for that matter. Or you might do both. But I'm going to put my email in the chat as well. Feel free to email me and reach out, and I'll connect you with one of our faculty to talk about ICF credentialing, specifically for those that Salman invited today, which is basically everybody who's here. Salman and I have talked about ways that we can reduce the costs of gaining your ICF credential. For the exchange rate, obviously, between the U.S. and Pakistan is not exactly fair, okay? So we totally understand that, and we've set something up that I've talked to Salman about that is very affordable and is very doable for you to still gain your ICF credential if that's something that you're looking to do. We have all the resources that you need to immediately get on that course. You could potentially have all your training hours fulfilled by the end of the year. We're starting a certification in just a couple weeks. And then finally, whether you're a coach or you work in an organization, if you'd like to license our assessment tools, we can also license that to coaches and trainers and consultants, and you can email me at the same email address to talk to us about that. So with that said, look, first of all, I really want to acknowledge you for sticking around. We went quite a bit over the planned time that we had, and I really honor you for the time and energy that you spent here to learn, to collaborate, to listen to some of those individual dialogues that maybe weren't so interesting to you, and hopefully to get more interested in what's going on with at least your team, if not other people as well, to master coaching and supporting others and team members to actually produce great results collaboratively as well. And I think if you've done some of that, or if not, or a lot of that, the future that you're going to create for you and your organization is going to be tremendous. To get there, you got to have energy. To get there, you got to believe you're already the leader to drive your performance and drive others' performance as well. You got to have courage to be willing to have others say that you're not doing it the way that they think you should, and stand up for yourself and your organization to really make a difference for the people around you. But everybody's got that opportunity. Everyone has that resources within them. Like I said, it's just tapping into it. So I hope that you do that, or took something from what we talked about today to really make your life or your team's life even better and create more success in your organization. So if you don't have any questions and you have a time constraint here, feel free to drop off. But if you do have questions, I'll stick around for another 10 minutes or so. We'll be happy to answer a few questions. And Dr. Corner and Chris Thompson on our team at Master Coach University, our faculty, are also available. So you guys feel free to chime in on some of the questions that are being asked if you haven't already chimed in. And then we'll go ahead and exit.
Yeah, Jeffrey, there's one question in the chat box from Irfan Khalid. He's saying anything about the capacity building and aligning your goals with the outcome from it. Probably we can take this and then we can wrap it.
Good question. So I would use the same tool that we talked about. That's not necessarily measuring capacity on its own, but capacity comes from values and behaviors. If my value is learning and knowledge and my behavior is very detailed, I'm very detailed, I could be amazing in engineering. Not because I'm trained as an engineer today, but because I'm motivated to learn, right? So capacities come from beliefs, values, and instincts, who you are. Those capacities stem from that. If you don't have the capacity you need today, if you value having that capacity enough, you could build the capacity. So I'm not saying don't care about capacities, right? But what I am saying is there's something that's more important long-term than capacity, which is your identity, like who you are, who you be, basically, what we call in coaching your being. That includes your natural instincts, which we can measure, and also your values, which we can also measure. When I know what your instincts, values, and beliefs are, I can already predict what's possible for you in terms of capacities, and then you can decide to align that with whatever outcomes you're working towards in the long term. In terms of capacity measurement, we do have an assessment that measures soft skill capacities, what we call attributes. Things like resilience and setting goals for others and a concrete organization and all these different soft skills that are not necessarily measured out of school, right? It's not math or science or engineering or English or language or communication. It's all these other skills that schools generally don't measure. And those capacities we find are very critical in business, and no one's ever taught those, and no one is being tested on those either. So hey, look, if I hire you as an engineer, I want to know that you understand how to be a good engineer. But if you're managing a team of engineers, I also want to understand that you can appreciate other people's motivational needs. I want to know that you can set goals for other people, not just yourself. Those are literal capacities that we measure in what we call the attributes index as well. So we can measure some capacities, and then the rest of them usually you can see by somebody's education and their past experience. What are their hard skills they probably already have or don't have as well. So my coaching for you is just you could build capacity if you're already aligned, and we know whether you're aligned or not just by running those assessments. If you'd like to take that battery, what I call a performance profile, like I said, reach out and email me, and we'll get you hooked up with a profile so you can check in with those, and we can even debrief. One of our team can debrief you on those results so that you can get a really good sense of what is going to create your capacities in the future above and beyond your current capacities. Because if you have time, if this is not your last year of working, over the next couple of years, you could build a capacity that you don't yet have. That could change your life. That could change your entire career. Could change your entire organization for that matter. Some organizations, by the way, some of you in the organizations need to build internal capacity that is not yet existing in your organization, and you shouldn't be hiring it from the outside. You should be training it on the inside. And now, how do you know whether to take the time and energy and money to train individuals? Beliefs and values. Measuring those psychographics like we talked about, that tells us whether somebody's worth the training that you invest in. So all these things stack on top of each other. Does that answer your question? If there's any follow-ups to that, let me know. Okay, any other questions? If you've asked one earlier, I just request you put it back in the chat so I don't have to scroll up too far. Or feel free to take yourself off of mute and speak up, and I'd love to hear what you are looking for or how it could serve before we go. Maybe a couple more before we go. And then, by the way, Coach Chris and Dr. Corner, if you guys have anything that you're spurred to think about based upon what we've talked about today, but from your experience, training coaches and working with our clients. Dr. Corner, by the way, I mentioned Shell Oil. earlier in coaching on the offshore oil platforms. I wasn't the coach. She was actually one of the coaches coaching engineers and some of the technicians on these oil platforms in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico as well. So she could speak to that experience more specifically than I can with our partners as well. But yeah, please, anything else to add, guys, before we go?
I was just going to add on the assessments. Sometimes when you look at someone's values, it can be a conflicting value. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a huge problem. It could just be awareness of you have two conflicting values. Maybe you have a value of getting the highest and best use of time and resources and of gaining theoretical knowledge. And one just wants to learn and not even use it. And the other part says, hey, we have to use this knowledge. And if you can meld those two conflicting values, sometimes you become stronger for it. And it doesn't have to be a major problem, right? It's the things that we aren't aware of sometimes that knock us off our feet a bit.
Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, if you're not aware of that, that could be a problem. But once you become aware of it and you're strategizing on how you can use those different seemingly conflicting values or behavioral styles, whatever, you can actually find a strategy with which you use those different capacities. And then suddenly it becomes your greatest strength. It's a really great point. Thanks, Dr. Coiner.
I also had a thought, I think a couple things. One around capacity. The vast majority of the time, the capacity that you have is not capped by your actual, ability. It's capped by the comfort level, that intolerance that you have with being uncomfortable. So whoever, it's the people who are willing to be uncomfortable are the ones that reach their capacity. If you think about someone going to the gym and they've got these, amazing muscles or whatever, maybe they're genetically, literally able to build muscle better than someone else can. But most people will never know that. They'll just make that excuse, well, they got good genes. Well, you can't really know that unless you've also done the same amount of working out and different things as that person who has the muscles. So a lot of times the difference is us fulfilling our capabilities by our expanding and getting used to and doing more and more things that are uncomfortable. And then we're able to fulfill whatever that capacity capability that we have actually is. And then another thought that I did want to share around.
By the way, Chris, before you continue on that piece, I just want to share. Chris and I work. I mean, we're on the same team. He's Master Coach University faculty, and Chris is a professional speaker. He's spoken in front of some of the largest organizations on the planet professionally for years and years and years as a sales trainer and to large groups. And he's trained as a speaker. But in our organization, we're a virtual organization. And so one of the ways that we actually work with and find our customers is through content that is written, right? Word by word, right? It's not necessarily spoken. And so for a while, Chris has got great wisdom within him. And actually, Dr. Coiner has done the same thing. But I have to say, Chris, I think the challenge was greater for you than Dr. Coiner as we work together on the writing side. So Chris really struggled with just writing the very things that he knew because that wasn't a strong muscle for him. And so there was a point where, we worked on a lot of strategies to build that capacity, right? But it was not comfortable for you, Chris. I know, no. There was a lot of struggle with that for months and months. And if you go to coachestrainingblog.com, somebody maybe put in the URL, and you're going to just search for Chris Thompson, search for some of his articles. Some of the best knowledge that you can find on our blog that we've posted for over a decade comes from Chris now, word for word, right? Because he was willing to be, just like you said, Chris, it's like uncomfortable. And before that, he would have fought to say, I'm not a writer. I'm just not very good at writing, And the fact is now it's like, he's one of the better writers that I've ever worked with, frankly, and that didn't take more than like 3 or 4 months, really. Obviously we worked on it for longer, but most of the upside of that capacity was just in a couple, 2-3 months, but that was not a comfortable couple months, so I just want to acknowledge you for that, Chris. And you're a perfect example of exactly the point that you made. So that's all.
Yeah, and I think it's keeping your identity small to some well too, because a lot of that resistance came that my version of myself, and again, this isn't about me, it's about you guys, right? But pay attention to anything you say after I am. So I would be like, I'm a speaker, I'm not a writer. I'm a speaker, I'm not a writer. Well, then guess what? When I want to try to write something, guess what's going to get in my way, right? As soon as it gets a little bit challenging, as soon as it, then it was, hey, I can't do this or whatever it is. And then that was something that, again, uncomfortableness I had to face to expand my capacity, if you will. And I think that's another thing that I want to highlight about these assessments and various things. They're incredible tools to discover what your strengths and weaknesses are, but they are not a sentence. This is not coming from a judge saying you are this only thing and you can't be anything else, or you can't improve in any other areas that maybe you're not naturally as strong at. You can absolutely do that if you have if you make the decision to do that and you have the strong enough reasons to do that. You can cultivate an area that may even be weak for you into an area of strength for you.
Yep.
Yes, of course, we want to work on your strengths too, no doubt, but there is a certain amount of result that could just go out the back end if we just let a weakness be a black hole, if you will, and just let everything go into it. So there is, there is. I'm only saying that because I've read literally thousands of these for people, and sometimes I've seen people when they learn this stuff, they start thinking, well, I can't be anything else than what this assessment says, and it's like, no, this is a starting point. This is just a snapshot in time of who you've been to this point. You have the capability. You're a human being. You're not a tree. You have the capability to change and be anything you want to do. It simply will be, some things might be more difficult for you to do than someone else might be. And so a lot of times we are going to probably focus you on doing something that particular suffering is easier for you than it would be for someone else, right? Like writing. A lot of people are probably better at suffering through writing than I am. I can do it now, but they're probably better at it. But yet get me on a stage in front of an audience in a group, I can probably go through that public speaking suffering easier than someone else could. So we're just highlighting that we want to know that that's maybe where you're most valuable to your team and to your clients, is that area that is your genius area, that you can go through that difficulty easier than maybe other people can. And that gives you the ability to unlock that for them. So I just wanted to highlight that because they're so powerful of tools, but they also are not some kind of judgment coming down from a jury or a judge saying that you are this way or you are that way. You may have a tendency one way or the other, but that doesn't mean you have to be that way if you don't want to be that way anymore. So I just wanted to share that.
And I think what we talked about earlier, the idea of motivation and aligned goals, if you have, and I think you even brought this up with that question, capacity building, aligning your goals and outcomes from it. If you have goals and outcomes that are very well aligned with your values and what you really care about, or you're just driven enough to do it, you will build those capacities because it's necessary, because you have to find the resources, And so I don't know if there's any medical or biology executives or experts here, but those that are, you understand the concept of neuroplasticity is that our brain is plastic. It does change. Now, most people don't change it very often, right? We get stuck in an environment, and our environment is what shapes us. We said that the first thing we talked about today was your environment creates this little box that you live in. That doesn't mean you can't change. It's just you've got to be an active participant in actually making those changes and find the technology through which to actually make those changes, and change then is possible and it actually can happen quite quickly as well. So thank you for that, Chris. It's a very good point. We have to balance our appreciation of the efficiency of who we need to select on the team with what can we train and what should we train and how quickly can that actually happen. Those are questions we need to answer in that conversation. All right, fantastic. Yeah, you got a couple fans on there. They say, "Thank you, Christopher. You're brilliant."
Thank you, everybody. I hope my struggle helped you in some way.
Totally. Okay, so I also just want to mention that I put Salman's email. He's the one that brought us together today in the chat. Salman's Gmail. I hope that's okay, Salman. So as I mentioned, if you're running a business or you're participating in a business and you like to find ways that we could help your business directly with some of these approaches, whether they be psychographic profiling or coaching or strategic planning or all of the above, please email Salman first, because Salman has direct access to me. And then, Salman, you can work on triangulating, hopefully, with your permission, the scheduling of those meetings so we can all talk together about that. But like I said, for those of you who are coaches or want to learn coaching technology, I would just go to mastercoachuniversity.com, or again, you can email me directly if you're looking for the discount that we're offering to Pakistan specifically for this next training that's coming up to gain your ICF credential. Training required to gain your ICF credential. We don't actually offer the credential itself. Only ICF does that. All right, guys, great work together today. And again, I really acknowledge you for being here. I look forward to seeing what kind of results you've gotten from what you've learned and what we've worked together on today. Please email Salman or me on what you're up to with what you're doing. What motivates me here, we talked about motivations earlier, is seeing the kind of results that are happening from what we talk about here and the work that we do and the coaching that we provide. That's why I stay up till 3 a.m. to work with you. So I can't wait to hear those things. And even if we aren't working together directly, whether it's in a business or a training environment, I really do hope our paths cross again soon. Salman, anything else that you want to bring up before we go ahead and complete today?
No, I think that was fantastic. And I want to thank you all of you, Jeffrey, Christopher, Dr. Connier. It's been amazing. I mean, it was about 1 hour session, but we managed to stretch it for another hour. And thank you to all the participants. Actually, I was expecting 15 or 20 participants, but at one time we had about 40. So I have to go and look at the ones who I did not send an email or a message, but they still joined. But it's been fantastic. I look forward that, with Master Coach University launching first time in Pakistan, we can have good people, good organizations connecting with us, and we move forward from here. I'm sure there will be a lot of things that we can do here in Pakistan. And during the session and during the comments, I was looking at it, and it keeps clear that the coaching part here in Pakistan, it's still really at the infancy stage. People really don't know what coaching is. And I could see it in the conversations that was happening. So that's an opportunity for us to really grab and work on it. But anyway, thank you so much for taking the time out. I'm really sorry for that's very late. You must be really sleepy at this time. You don't look like it, but anyway.
By the way, one more thing, Salman, before we go, I just want to bring this up. I know, Salman, you recorded this session. I also recorded a high quality on my end. I do believe we captured it. So anybody who's actually signed up with Salman for this event, Salman, I'll work with you on this. We're going to send you a link which will actually give you a full replay so you can download everything. If there's anything you missed, you can watch it again and really absorb these different concepts as well, because I really want you to have access to using this stuff. And we'll send you a few links for further study on top of that. We have a video training that covers our strategic planning method that's much more detailed than what we had time to cover today. So sorry about that, Salman. I'll turn it back over to you.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. There were a couple of guys, some CEOs could not join. They just messaged me. And one of them wanted to have an ICF credentials, and they wanted to have a one-to-one meeting with you. So that's a good thing. So look forward. So thank you so much again.
Take care, guys. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you soon.